That's right, everybody. Welcome finally to the Blue Stable season preview for the Indianapolis Colts. Welcome to the Blue Stable podcast. Obviously, our boy Culture Shock Marcus. I was trying to combine his name and Culture Shock. Obviously, he's missing, which is a rare occurrence. He never misses, but he had some family stuff that popped up. If you can, send your well wishes out to him. Had a family emergency, so he's taking care of his fam right now, and we completely understand that. So it's going to be hard without him being here because he's normally the one that keeps us in check, right?
Yeah, this could go for 4 hours.
Yes, this is going to be an experiment because you got two dudes here that just love talking ball, and we could go all day, all night, basically getting into things. But I'll do my best to keep everything on track for the most part. That being said, if you are joining us, we are live here on YouTube. Go ahead, hit the like, subscribe, notification buttons. That way, you can get notified anytime we come out, drop new content. We'll be doing it every single week. Talking about the games that just happened, previewing the next matchup. So next week we'll be getting into the nitty gritty of. I'm sure for both of us, it's going to be a fun one next week.
Oh yeah.
With Green Bay.
I'm just excited. I can smell the football. Hayes in the barn. I've been thinking about this game too much. I was just saying before we went on air, I'm tired of watching Texans film. I'm just tired of it. I'm ready for new Anthony Richardson tape to learn, to watch, to get excited about, to maybe, feel some pain with everyone with some of the lows. I'm just ready to ride it out this season. So
yeah, it's gonna be.
I'm tired of talking. There's been a lot of talking in this game, which we all know. So just excited to let's line up and let's go play football.
Yeah, and hey, it starts tonight in Kansas City. Kansas City, Baltimore is kicking off tonight in just a few hours. So real football is officially back, and we have football tonight. We have football tomorrow. We have football Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. It's the best time of the year, in my personal opinion. So
I know we have to savor this moment because come like May, I'm going to be wishing that I would pray for moments like this. So we just have to.
All season's long. If I had to do one more show talking about what we think about the secondary, I was gonna drive off a bridge, bro.
I'm done. No, we're not. I said I'm done. I already cut the line. As soon as Simmons signed with the Falcons, done talking about the secondary.
It's over. We're finally here. We can talk about actual football now.
Yeah.
And the next week's going to be even better because we'll have actual film from a real Colts regular season game to talk about. So, without further ado, let's hop into it, man. So in this show, we're going to be talking about our season-long predictions as far as where we think this team is headed, where it ends up at the end of the year. I don't know if you want to do the whole record prediction thing.
No. I mean, we can, but no. I know for the people that are here, it's I don't do the whole pick a score. There's so many things that can happen. It's listen, I'm here for really one reason. I know I joke around on the internet and throw off some takes here and there, but I'm here to break down the film, help people understand, help myself continue to learn more about football. I'm really all about watching the film. That's my brand. That's who it's all about. So I don't do the whole record prediction thing because breaking down the film doesn't tell you that there's too many variables. So there's plenty of people that do that. I'm not going to say that I'll never throw out a prediction or anything like that.
I mean, we'll throw something out at the end of the show, but it's one of those.
Skip that part because I don't really mean it.
It is what it is. But yeah, we'll get into the Texans. Actually, you know what? I think we should just go ahead and just hop right into the Texans stuff. I think we should save the season-long stuff for later. Let's just hop right into week one. Obviously you just said you're tired of watching Houston. You're tired of watching Bobby Slowick. You're tired of the Shanahan offense with the fullback and the motions and all that kind of stuff. You're going to get a heavy dose of it on Sunday, week one. I'll give you the floor and kind of let everybody know what you've been seeing and kind of what the team needs to prepare for on Sunday.
Yeah, so I think a good way to do this is, if you guys hadn't looked, I'm going to try and do this for every single one, basically a scouting report. So with keys to the game based off of everything. And I tried to make this a season-long project, and it didn't really come to fruition for whatever reason. I think we can just go through some of the keys to the game in that area and talk about those individually. And I think that would be a good way to do it. So we can start on the defensive, on the Indianapolis defensive side, Houston offense. Like I said, I'm tired of watching Bobby Slowick. I'm tired of watching 21 personnel. I'm tired of watching lead schemes and lead stretch and I'm just tired of it. The first one that I have here for defensive keys to the game is stay disciplined in the run game. I think given the way that you go look in that week 18 matchup, and that's where I've really based, because the teams are different, but they really aren't that different schematically. Like, that's who they last were. That's how we last known them as when they were game planning for each other. So, like, you look in that week 18, it's a great
right. And the personnel's a little bit different. Sure. Houston's
there's so many unknowns
on their O-line. Joe Mixon was added. We can go on and on about that. But realistically, both these teams are returning, their offensive systems, their defense, basically their entire coaching staff. And I think that was a big key for Houston, is not losing Bobby Slowick in this offseason, and allowing him to come back, to CJ going into his second year now. Everybody's able to take what they did last year and build off of that, which is very similar to how the Colts are projecting as well, with their continuity. And they've talked about, how big continuity is with this team. There really shouldn't be any reason for like slow starts from, the defensive side of the ball. Like, all these guys are back. So everybody should be taking a leap. So yeah, take us through what you're seeing as far as, the Houston defense. What were you saying, the Houston defense and the Colts offense?
Yeah, no, the Colts defense, Houston offense. Okay. So the first thing I would say is we got to stay disciplined in the run game. I think any team that plays Houston does, because you go look at that week 18 matchup, and the way that the Colts structure their fronts is they play a wide 9 defense. What is a wide 9 defense? It just means you're going to have a 9 technique and an open 5. So basically, it's, in layman's terms, it's really just they're taking a traditional front and they're really allowing a lot of space in the interior so they could have natural funnels on the outside. So like Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye were the 2 defensive ends, and they were aligned wider than like a traditional front, because that's the whole philosophy is, hey, let's get a massive nose tackle like Grover Stewart, and then guys funneling it inside.
And that's why this type of defense too is it's so fundamental in having those guys up front. Like, you've heard Chris Ballard talk about the 3 technique is the engine of this defense, and you have Grover Stewart there as well and nose tackle. So having DeForest Buckner, having Grover Stewart allows you, because those guys are almost going to command double teams no matter what.
Yeah, and the one thing to understand, part of that too, is obviously that leaves so much space in the interior, but it also, these players will fly off the ball. So like the philosophy that I know Zach Hicks has put it into words, and I think people talk about this, but stop the run on the way to the quarterback. So the reason that they're not trying to like read gaps the way that like maybe a Vic Fangio defense is, where we're trying to read runs and read offensive linemen, like we are attacking the ball and relying on the linebackers to clean it up. And one of the things that Bobby Slowick did is said, hey, we're just going to get under center and we're just going to run the ball right at you, because you are short in the run game. And to start that game, Gus Bradley was playing quarters and quarter half. So they were even less space to work with. So they just ran it right down Indianapolis's throat until they adjusted. And they did. But there's a lot of motion in this run game, and you have to stay disciplined, because this system puts a lot on its linebackers. So having guys that can do that, it's important that you stay and keep it in as many obvious passing downs as possible.
Yeah, and getting in, I think like that's such a huge thing, and we actually kind of heard it, basically from a different team. This week with Baltimore, talking about Patrick Mahomes and how that was very like misconstrued, where he was like, we need to, stop the run and make them pass. And I don't think it was necessarily about making Patrick Mahomes pass more. I think it was about putting him into obvious passing situations to where you're able to game.
You have more flexibility. Like,
exactly. If
people don't realize
pass, then you're getting into those second, third and longs. You're not allowing them on first, second down to chug off, 4 or 5 yards, and then it's a 3rd and 3 or a 3rd and 2, because then that opens up the whole playbook.
3rd and 7 plus. That's in a play caller sheet. Likely, most teams are doing it. 3rd and 7 plus. Those are plays you're typically not expecting to convert for first downs, unless someone makes a play. Someone makes a mistake on defense. It's just really hard to convert 3rd and longs.
Yeah,
so
and I mean, there's
you can get the better.
Yeah, and there's advanced data that backs up, if a team is in that like 3rd and 7 range, they only convert.
Be careful with the analytics.
Yeah, I know.
The analytics stuff.
Here we go. Something I'm not necessarily known for, but I mean, like, there's
we could talk EPA per play. I know our buddy Brian Callahan is talking about
this. Yeah, there we go. That's what really matters, right? That's what it looks like there. But yeah, I mean, getting CJ Stroud into obvious passing situations, getting off the field, on 3rd down, I think it's going to be such a huge thing for this game, because this Texans offense, it really is based on, rhythm and, getting the ball out quickly, understanding what CJ Stroud's looking at pre-snap. And he's great at that stuff. That's where he carves people up, man.
And we'll get to that, but
I mean, that's like his bread and butter. And if you're getting them into those spots and you're stopping the run, and I know this is such like I'm sure we'll get comments too, because it's such an old school, thing where it's like, what's the key to the game? It's like, we need to stop the run. Like, I know Colts fans.
I don't necessarily mean stop. Well, yes,
I know, but
I mean be disciplined, because they have some things in there. And this is, again, I hate talking about it, but they'll do stuff with them because I hate this offense. Not because it's not good football. Like, it's great football. It's annoying to watch. Like, it's just, it's not my flavor of ice cream.
I like it. I think it's effective. I love
it absolutely
that run.
This is not offenses
that run motion like that.
I love the spread. I love the spread. But they run a lot of motion that will help create advantages in the run game. And then when you talk about what they did with Tank Dell, especially, where have to honor him running across the field, and when you do, you have to make sure you're sound in your fits. And that'll be a huge part in that. The second key, this is probably the most important one, if there was ever one, is put pressure on CJ Stroud. And again, you can say that about every quarterback every single week. When you go look at CJ,
this is a weekly talk.
Sure, obviously, because these are all good things to happen. But when you look specifically at CJ Stroud, he basically shredded every single coverage, every single one. There was one that he did struggle against that he didn't see very often, but when he did, his passer rating fell to 78.5 is what I wrote down.
Cover 0, right?
Yep, his success rate dropped to 31%. The whole philosophy of Gus Bradley is we're going to sit back and play cover 3. We're going to have different ways to play cover 3, take away explosives, and then just bank on the fact that after stopping the run, that you're going to make a mistake and we're going to take an explosive away from it. That's the philosophy is, hey, we're just going to keep calling the same thing and you're going to have to keep checking it down. And after a while, if we made a couple stops, we get you into an obvious passing situation, someone's going to get antsy. Well, CJ Stroud isn't that type of guy. They run a lot of pure progression reads in Houston. What does that mean? It means 1, 2, 3, 4, like true 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if his first read is open, not often does CJ pass it up. He will take the check down. He will he's a great distributor of the football. So the one weapon that the Colts have is to throw him off his rhythm and timing and his drops by bringing pressure. So I expect them to do that. I think they'll get home with 4. I think that they're going to have to do some of those 7-6 up looks where we're double mugging in the A gap and really forcing this offensive line to communicate, which is my third, and it kind of goes hand in hand. So I want to do them both before you wade in. It's just like this offensive line we expect to obviously be probably more improved than what we saw in week 18. That doesn't necessarily always equate to being locked in and dialed in as a unit right away. Meaning that think about the best offensive lines in this league, and they're usually returning year to year 3-ish guys or more.
That's a position where continuity is the most important, because you have 5 guys that have to play as one unit. If one, there's that old saying,
or you have a rock star offensive line coach. That it's one of those two.
But you guys hear it about the offensive line is you're only as strong as your weakest link on the offensive line, and all it takes is one guy, and your whole unit can crumble. Now, obviously, if you have great players beside of them, that kind of helps mitigate that. But right now, as much as the talent has been there, they drafted guys like Kenyon Green in the first round. Laramie Tunsil's there. They've added a few additional guys. The talent's there, but these guys haven't played a lot of snaps together. And I think catching them in week one, it can be a blessing and a curse, right?
And here's the other thing that I want to talk about, especially with making this offensive line communicate. If Lucas Oil is rocking, which I think it will, they are on a silent count.
Yeah.
They are on a silent count. Yeah. So that becomes, and I wanted to I didn't want to be that guy, but I wanted to post this clip of a DeForest Buckner sack. I think he sacked him. He definitely beat the guard by a mile. And the way that they handle their silent counts is a lot of the time when you look back and a team is usually on the road for the most part, unless your crowd is bananas and you can't hear anything. And you'll see a guard turn back to the quarterback, and he'll usually give like a leg kick or hands down or something like that, and then he'll just tap the center to snap it. In the case of Houston, is they just have their left guard just flashes his hand forwards to the center. But what that does is that gives everyone a playing field because they can't do cadences to mix up the timing of the rushers. Everybody's on the same playing field. So DeForest Buckner is essentially getting a free step ahead of these pass rushers because they have to go on a silent count. So that's why being loud is super important when it comes to that and making these guys communicate. But it also helps you because last year Houston was in the top 5 in false starts last year. So if you try and you miss the silent count, you miss if they try and go regular cadence, you can make them pay in that regard.
Yeah, I just shout out to my boy Marcus here. I agree with you 100% on that because that's his go-to line. So he's still hearing.
What's his go-to line? The silent count?
Yeah, no, the 100%. He's always like, I agree with you 100%. He always says that. It always gives me a kick listening to episodes back and forth, with him doing that. But yeah, I think that those are tremendous keys to the game for me, which you kind of already touched on this. To me, it was going to be actually, getting the pressure on CJ Stroud because of the deficiencies with, the blitz and the cover zero. Whenever he has pressure in his face, he's a guy that is very much in the mold of I'm not going to say like a pure traditional drop back guy, but I think you put it well, like a distributor of the football. He's got a little wiggle to him, but he's not a guy that's, Lamar Jackson, Anthony, like a guy that's going to just make you pay.
I don't think he can't create because he
can definitely create.
Yeah, well, he did in week 18, which I'll get to, but it's not his calling card.
Right. And if you can get him in uncomfortable situations where he's got a guy in his face, and I think this year, obviously bringing in Latu, Kwity Paye hopefully making a jump, Forrest Buckner being back, all those. The Colts have the defensive line horses to do this. And this is going to be a great game, I think, to catch them off guard. And we got H-Town highlights here. Comment these CJ was ranked first when it comes to converting, third downs.
We'll get to that.
We'll touch on that as well.
But that's certainly true.
Yeah, but I think just getting him off his spot, creating just different type of, I want to say just arm aim, how guys super comfortable, with doing that stuff. But CJ, man, it's so hard. It's so hard to fool that guy, and especially now with another year, under his belt, it's so beautiful because he's one of the rare. I mean, there's guys you can be accurate, but to be accurate at the level that he is, where it's just he can put the ball.
Yeah, and there's a couple examples.
He can shoot a bullet through a dime.
Here's the way, because I've watched that Week 18 game in pretty good detail, and I think I left it every single time saying Houston won that game because CJ Stroud put pretty much the entire offense on their back.
Yeah.
I don't think they won that game because they were the better team. I think they had the better quarterback, and that was the difference. Because there were some throws specifically to Nico Collins where normal quarterbacks do and everyone wants to compare him to the upper echelon of Mahomes or like these guys. You just don't see quarterbacks, especially as a rookie, come in the clutch and make those type of throws really ever. And he came in and did that, and it was really impressive. And I think that if you're trying to game plan for this, let's just take the bet that he doesn't do it again. And if he does, then okay, then that's where the chips fell. You gave it everything you had, but there were some throws where it's like you don't expect. And I'm thinking like some of these field side out routes.
That's what my mind was going to, is that the way he throws out routes, right?
And like there are throws that you just don't expect a rookie quarterback to make, and they were applying pressure down in and down out, and he was running for his life making throws. He was making throws knowing that he was about to take a huge hit. Like he did everything. I think that was his best game he played as a pro. I've watched almost every single one.
Yeah, he
just from the clutch moments to putting when guys were just not giving him the help that he needed, he made it work anyway. Like he came to absolutely play.
Yeah, and I mean, and that was kind of my biggest gripe, I guess, with that game, and really with the Colts pressure percentage, I guess, in that game, was because at fourth quarter, once it got late in the game, it really kind of just fell off a cliff, and I think it was because these guys were basically chasing him around so much, and in the game, it just like a guy that can do that to you, it just wears you out, and it's just backbreaking, right?
Yeah,
you have pressure on a guy, and
it's demoralizing. It's demoralizing when I think DeForest Buckner talked about it. Man, he had like split a double team, done all this, like done everything he could to get to the quarterback, lays a huge hit on CJ, and he hits that like random scramble drill to Nico Collins, the one I'm talking about. Yeah, people remember it. There was another one where it might have been Tyquan Lewis. I can't remember. Maybe it was Dio. Someone was literally in his face, and he hits the in the fringe red zone area to Nico Collins again. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what do you can't call a better play. You can't execute a better defensive coverage. Like he put that ball in like maybe the coverage wasn't the best, but it doesn't matter because you have a guy right in his face. You don't usually expect him to complete that ball, and he did anyway. So I think the moral of the story with some of the other keys of the game is like, let's just take the bet as an Indianapolis. Like if we're pretending we're in the coaching staff here and game planning for the game, like let's take the bet that he won't do it again. And if he does, then they deserve to win that game.
Yeah, and I mean, even with that, it's not like it was one of those shootout games where it was Houston put up 35, 40 points as well. I mean, it was still a very manageable game from the defense. I mean, defense played about as well as you could, and
the defense really didn't. You take out a couple plays where we doubled.
I mean, obviously, like the first play of the game, the miscommunication, the bomb.
Absolutely, there's a couple. There's a couple of those. There's absolutely a couple of. I'm thinking particularly.
Nico Collins.
I was thinking particularly. It was 7-3. They'd shown that formation on tape a couple of times, so I'm kind of surprised no one saw it. But basically, when they're in a 1-by-3 formation with the tight end attached to the core, so in a nub formation, and Nico Collins is at 3. It is going to be a predetermined RPO, whether we're passing it to the bubble or we're just running inside zone. Nico Collins takes a bubble. Zaire Franklin doesn't take a good enough angle. He deletes it. It goes for maybe 40, 50 yards. I forgot exactly what it was, but it's plays like that where it's like, man, if we just saw that coming, we got into something different, we took a better angle to the tackle, like we would be in a lot. That was a huge play in the game because they went down into the low red zone and then scored 2 plays later to the fullback in the back of the end zone. So to make it 14-3. So you think about some of these plays that have just gone the different way, and that's really what the league is.
And I was going to say that's just that. And that's just the nature of the game. I mean, it really is.
I didn't think the defense got absolutely. I really don't think that. I think they had a couple.
I don't think the defense really played that bad at all. I mean, outside of
just capitalized.
Yeah, and I mean, you see. And I think that's where people were really concerned, I guess, from that week 18 game, is because you see the highlights, right? So you see the few big plays, that they did allow, and everybody thinks that's really the entire game. And in reality, it wasn't. But yeah, I think those are all great points. And just getting, I know a lot of people hate getting division round people early, especially a team like this early. But
the Colts were back-to-back last year, so
yeah, right. So, but I do think this in a weird way with the Colts continuity, returning, and obviously the biggest wild card in this is Anthony Richardson, right? But I think returning as many guys as they did, returning the entire coaching staff, all of that, it does kind of play well into Indianapolis's hands as far as like with it being at home. There's really no
something out that we can talk about. Just making sure we get through these. The other one I have is don't let Tank Dell beat you. I think arguably he's the one that I think it could go south very quickly if you let him get involved in the game early, just because of his ability to just create explosive plays like that. And I think if they line him up in the slot, which they might do, it's just harder to give those guys attention. So Tank Dell is, obviously you don't want to let any of them beat them. But Tank Dell is the one that I think scares me particularly the most, given the connection that he had with CJ Stroud last year and just how they were on the same page. And then with big, long physical press corners getting in the mix, that's typically not the best matchup that you want. I know Hustleman Jones just said that I think Kenny will cover Tank and shut him down. That's a possibility. I did say in the preseason, which I didn't necessarily expect, Tank wasn't in the slot. Diggs was in the slot.
Yeah, so, that's what I was going to point out. Is it seems a lot like now. I think, just me personally, I think Nico Collins is going to be the wide receiver one on that team. But Diggs, I think, has the chance, if he does end up lining up in the slot like he was. Looks like he dipped out. He'll be back on just a second. But if Diggs does end up continuing the route that he did in the preseason, I think he has the chance to catch the most balls on this team. So
I have no idea what just happened there.
I was like, well, he just dipped out. I was like, he'll be back in a minute. But
I'm sure you just had an amazing point.
Yeah, yeah, not really, but no. I mean, I'll just continue on what I was going to say even when you were on is with Diggs lining up in the slot. I think he has the chance to catch the most balls on this team, but Tank Dell, I think,
and that's the preseason, so who knows? Maybe they want you to think that. Like, no one really knows. And I think the other thing that's so important, like as I'm trying to give like the best possible, like what coaches potentially, like even the 10% of what coaches would think game planning for a team, is that like it's really hard in week one because there are so many unknowns, and this is not what the team's going to be. Like the team that you are in week one, like go look at the Colts in week one, and Jake Funk and Deion Jackson were. Wait, there was another one. Was Trey Sermon in that game? I forgot. But anyway, Chris Ballard said it in his presser. Like the running backs, like who could name those? And like the teams that you're going to get to down the stretch are totally different. So I think, you have to be ready to adjust in game to what they're trying to do. I think that's a big part of it. And then the obvious one is just tackling. Like that's been the Achilles heel of this defense more than anything else. Like I think when people point to the secondary and everything, they are, really quick to just say that people are free runners and all this kind of stuff. And I think I'm not necessarily denying that, but I think when you go look at some of the explosive plays and you go look at the cut up of all the explosive plays allowed, you will definitely see that there's a lot of missed tackles on that tape. So like making sure we're sound in that area will be huge as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really kind of like what Ballard was kind of betting on with bringing these guys back and not making the addition, whether we agree or not.
I'm not saying that I do.
And I think everybody knows where we both stand on that. But I think that's kind of the bet that this team is making is these guys taking a step forward as far as, really, if you look at everything, it wasn't as bad as what people think it was last year as far as the secondary goes. I mean, I think, to quote your favorite thing, I think pass down EPA per play here. I believe they were right in the middle.
Hater. I'm not an EPA hater.
I'm not either. And it's so weird for me to be using analytics, but I mean, in reality, I think there's a good marriage.
But it's not gospel.
It's a tool.
That's my issues. It's not gospel.
It's a tool, but the film is the film. That's kind of where I stand. But they were average. I believe they were 15th in passing down EPA with the secondary. So I think if these guys just clean up some of the few mistakes, the miscommunications, the tackling, stuff like that, normally things that guys, as they play more snaps in this league, do tend to clean up. Yeah. I think that's the bet they're making with the secondary here, is that those changes will take place.
Absolutely. So let's get to the offensive side. I think this is a good format that we're doing this, by the way.
Yeah.
One for me, and I think I'm going to put this here every week, is stay healthy.
That's mine. That's mine, right?
Here's the thing. This is an emotional game, no doubt about it. The Colts want to win, no doubt about it. Anthony Richardson taking a nasty hit at the pylon to potentially win a week 1 game when there's 16, 17 left, potentially more if this team reaches their ceiling. It doesn't do anything. Does literally nothing. And I think obviously you got to go get it when you got to go get it, but slide, seriously slide. And everyone needs to prioritize some sort of health, because a season-long injury for this team would be detrimental. I think they can handle some depth on the offensive line, because you inevitably have to season after season. They are built that way. And everyone loves to really critique Chris Ballard, but they won't be if there's an injury on this offensive line, and you really can sub simultaneously. I think Matt Gonzalez and Blake Freeland, obviously it wasn't great last year. I think you bet on that it will be a little bit better than maybe it has been.
And Mortellini is back as well, practicing as well.
In the interior, and not that Wesley French did a particularly terrible job out there.
I love the interior depth of this line.
The interior depth is great, so God forbid anything happens there. And then, so we'll see in that regard, but you always love having that. But yeah, I think for the most part, staying healthy is going to be really crucial. Everyone getting out clean and heading into Green Bay, a healthy unit. And maybe there's going to be it's football's football, but nothing that's going to keep people out of games.
Yeah. And see, that was my big point as well in this game, is because that is one of my concerns, is because this is all new. We haven't seen it. And it's not necessarily saying, this guy's injury prone or this, but Jonathan Taylor's been banged up here in the last few years. Obviously we saw Anthony Richardson. A lot of it was bad luck, but even if you take out the season ending injury, he didn't really finish any game but the Rams game. He was hurt in every single game except the Rams game. Eventually that's going to be a key where look, man,
and I'm sure he's hearing that. Let's be real. He's hearing that in the quarterback room, no doubt about that.
He cares about it probably more than anybody, right? I mean, because he's sitting there, and I don't know if you listened to the Trenches podcast that Zaire Franklin did. Anthony Richardson was on this last week, so I'll listen to it. And that's something that he's talked on multiple times, is because I got in the topic of the Houston game last year. And he was saying, I felt like I was in that game. That right. Yeah. And I mean, he's like, I felt like I was in that game. But whenever you're sitting there and you're in that situation where that you're a difference maker, that if you're on the field, it changes everything. And he's having to watch this team be 1 game away from the playoffs and really only a few plays away from the playoffs. And knowing that he could have made the difference if he had kind of prioritized a few different things, he said it hurts. And that's one of his main takeaways from last year is hey, I've got to be there. I've got to be available. And so to me, that was, and we'll get on, whenever we do the full season preview here in a few minutes, or well, maybe not a few minutes, but in a little bit.
I got a couple more.
Yeah. But that was going to be my biggest key, is hey, it's week 1. There's been a lot of talking. CJ, I know CJ and Richardson are boys, they're probably talking back and forth. It's a rivalry matchup. And this is the 2 teams that it came down to last year for the division. There's a lot of things that's been said in the offseason. It's week 1, right? I mean,
we got a gauntlet. We got a gauntlet here.
Yeah, dude, it's week 1. I know these guys are going to want to come out and win. And obviously we want them to win too, but I'll tell you what, I would much rather, just for me personally, I would much rather start 1-3 and finish the season strong and make a playoff push, as opposed to starting the season with a good record, because you guys are selling out every single play early on in the year, and then something happens and it's wrecking the season.
I don't want to. I want to end like the Indianapolis Colts and not the Jacksonville Jaguars. No offense. I'm just saying that, like, or the Indianapolis Colts in 2021. Like, like you don't want to have that kind of collapse. But yeah, I agree. I think we're on the same page of just like, got to stay healthy. Got to stay healthy. If there's going to be opportunities in a game where Anthony Richardson's going to get don't get it twisted. Anthony Richardson will have carries in this ball game. Like, he will be running the ball. I think the doctors, all the people around him, he got unlucky. I wouldn't call him injury prone. No, he got very unlucky. But there's going to be times where inevitably the statistics will show that if you run your quarterback, you're going to expose yourself to more hits and more injuries. Like, there are some quarterbacks that can take maybe 5-10 hits a game. There's others that are going to take a lot more. So,
and really, it's about the type of hits too. I think like that's a big thing. It's football. It's a contact sport. You're going to get hit no matter what. But it's the type of hits you're exposing yourself to. There's a difference between standing in the pocket, or maybe you're running out of bounds and you take a shove and you fall down. Like things can happen on every play. But there's a big difference between taking those type of things and then
the unnecessary one,
and then taking a shot straight from a safety or a linebacker whenever you're on the your own 25-yard line trying to pick up a first down on first and 10 or 2nd and 9.
So the next one I got here, I totally agree with you, by the way, is create conflict with the linebackers. I think when you go look at when Anthony Richardson actually did play this Houston Texans defense, albeit a little bit different from a personnel's perspective, is they could not stop that. There was nothing they could do. Shane Steichen calls, and again, I've said this, I think I've said this on here, but like when you want to go look at a good play caller, you don't look at explosive plays because those are good plays. A good play caller is long sustaining drives, and Shane Steichen has plenty of those on his resume. And when you go look at that first, as does Bobby Slowick, really, but you go look at that first drive in Houston, he was doing things to get the ball quick out of Anthony Richardson's hand, leverage the quarterback run game, get information, whether it's come out in different personnel groups to different formations, seeing how they're going to play things, whether it's empty, whether it's bunches and stacks, how are they going to play that? Like he's really good at getting all that information in his first drive. But when you come down to it, nobody up front in that Houston front seven was able to contain Anthony Richardson and the play designs that they had for him. So I think, and then when you also take Anthony Richardson out of the entire equation, you go to week 18.
Yeah, even just the RPO game.
Like people said, like, oh, Jonathan Taylor went. I put a tweet out about this, like, oh, Jonathan Taylor went crazy, 188 yards, and that's true, he did, but he also got helped by the scheme of the fact that like that big 50-yard touchdown, that wasn't a designed handoff, that was an RPO that they hand the ball off. And did he make someone miss? Yes, and it was impressive and it was cool and it was all those things, but like the RPO puts so much stress on these linebackers because you want to come down. And this is why I've said it's hard to defend this offense without an interior presence. Because I don't think Houston has anyone that has challenged Quentin Nelson, Will Fries, and Ryan Kelly enough where these linebackers can't get into the fit right away because they have to worry about a backside slant coming, right behind them. So they're late to getting into the fit, and the nose tackle is getting blown off the ball. So that's where some of these
and that's freeing up guys, and as you know, you're getting guys like if you get Quentin Nelson or Ryan Kelly specifically, you get those guys to the second level where they're on linebackers or safeties or corners. Yeah, I mean you're toast at this point. Yeah, you're done.
And so that's why it's like this ski. Like I think maybe the fan base is pretty nervous about potentially what could happen this year. And
I think the floor that Richards
is so high just for that reason. Like I don't know what the ceiling is. The ceiling might not be much higher than the floor, worst case scenario. But the floor is that this rushing offense is going to be enough to keep them in a lot of ball games, and especially down the stretch when it matters the most.
And I think too, like this was one of my keys as well, is with the offense is when you're rushing the ball, obviously you have a lot of clock control, a lot of ball control. You're able to break off those long sustaining drives. What does that do? Keep CJ Stroud watching the ball. He's on the sideline. And whenever you have an offense, kind of like how they run, where it is very, based on timing and rhythm and getting the ball out and guys being in certain spots, the less they're able to be on the field, hey, you're throwing off that rhythm a little bit. And that might pay dividends later on in the game where you're not allowing these guys like Nico Collins and CJ Stroud had in week 18 to just have such a rapport to where they're just killing you constantly. So I think that could play a big role. And I think that's a way the offense can help out this secondary and this defense, going into week 1. So to me, it's about controlling the clock, long sustaining drives. And that's probably going to be
my next one.
Single week. Yeah. Like that's going to be a key for me every week is these sustaining drives. And I think this is probably where you'll see a little bit with Richardson, the up and down play, kind of similar, like obviously the Bengals game is what it was and it's preseason and it doesn't really matter. But I do think some of that stuff you'll see early on this season as he's kind of getting more comfortable, getting more snaps. Because remember, this is a guy coming into week 1. He has only started 17 games since high school. So you are inevitably going to have those ups and downs. So to me, it is about Shane Steichen. How do you create these long sustaining drives? Because the explosives are going to be there this season, no matter what. You're going to have plays that Richardson makes where he's rolling to his left or his right, and he's made 2 dudes miss, and he's launching the ball to A.D. Mitchell or Alec Pierce 60 yards down the field, and they're going into the end zone. And that's going to get posted all over social media, and everybody's going to go crazy. But to me, as this team goes, as the year goes, it's more about, hey, can we make these plays to where we're not having to rely on Richardson to do that constantly? It's great that it's there, but I want to see more sustained drives. Hey, reel off a 10-play, 11-play, 7, 8, 10-minute drive.
The RPO gives you that for sure. And I think,
but it's really about I guess it's just more about if they get down early, right? And you're getting into those passing situations. If it is like week 18, where you were saying it's 14-3, right? But we've seen Richardson do this, right? We've seen it with the Rams game, right? He single-handedly put this team on his back and brought it back. So you're going to have games that look like that, but you're also going to have games that look like the first half of that Rams game. And so it's really, to me, about mitigating that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, that really covers, my second to last bullet, but my last one, and I think this actually goes off a question that I really love that I got, is have a plan for pressure on 3rd and long. That's when, let me pull up the exact numbers for my charting. On 3rd and 7+, they are 61% cover 3, but that does include most fire zones and sim pressures. But they're 43% blitz team. So they are bringing the heat on these 3rd and long pass plays. And they're also doing it pretty much on 3rd and 4 to 6 too, at 15%. So they're bringing guys. They're bringing the heat. And I think one of the questions that I was asked is how do you protect the edge versus Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson? I think there's a couple of different ways in the Colts system that'll do it. I'll talk about I think the one that makes the most sense. And it's very scouted look because you want to know, how does this guy like to rush? How does this guy going to beat us if he does rush? And I think the Colts have a couple ways to do this, right? The first one being, hey, if we're in a 3-by-1 formation, we line the tight end up onto the line of scrimmage and we just chip him out. He's going to lay a chip and then bump into, usually it's into the flat, because that creates a 3-level vertical stretch. So that's why you usually do that out of 3-by-1 formations, because he'll just run that flat after he chips the guy. And then, I think the other way that you can do it that I think they like doing is if you have a guy that loves taking these outside rushes, you'll have the tackle set inside and then usually the halfback chip that outside shoulder. My least favorite way is when you're in an open formation, so it's just the 5 offensive linemen and nobody's on the line of scrimmage or off next to them. Is when you bring in, whether it's a slot or a tight end or whatever, and you just chip the guy right into the tackle and just give him free momentum. I think that's a way that you definitely can't handle that. So having a plan for pressure is going to be huge on those down and distances, expecting it, when you're at home or in the stadium, knowing that that's a real possibility. Now, everyone likes to bring pressure on 3rd and long, but so does D'Amico Ryans. We'll see, but I think, you obviously want to stay out of those third and longs. That's the goal, but you're inevitably going to see a couple. So what's your plan? Because I think the cardinal sin for any play caller is here's this awesome play we drew up, but you didn't seal the edge. And Nick Sirianni did this really awesome interview for NBC ahead of the Friday night game, and he was talking about how when he was in Indianapolis with Frank Reich, Frank would always ask, "How are we going to protect the edge? How are we going to protect the edge this week?" And I hadn't really thought about that. This guy hasn't had a sack in a couple of weeks. He's like, well, that's what they want you to think, because guys like Freeney and Mathis, people would protect the edge, and then this team would be like, oh, they haven't had a sack in a couple of weeks, and the second that they did it, they would capitalize on something like that. So this is the way that I see it, is that you have to have a plan for that. You can't drop this coverage, and then really it's just unfair to Ryman and Braden Smith, as good as they are, to block these guys for long extended periods of time.
Yeah, and to me, I think something that goes into that as well is keeping the defense off balance, right? And obviously having that quarterback run, the threat of that is a way to do that, because they're both so explosive that, like, it wouldn't surprise, and like people hate this, right? Where it is third and long and you're not calling a pass play. But these guys are so explosive that between Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, that I do think even the threat of the quarterback run, even on obvious passing downs, I think that plays a role and can affect the way either the linebackers or the defensive linemen have to guess, right? Because the threat is there, not necessarily saying that's what they're going to call, but just having that threat there, you're always going to be worried about it. And that's, reason why you hear linebackers and so many guys talk about how they hate playing quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson or Lamar Jackson and all that, is because even when you have the perfect plan, it can go out the window so quickly with those guys.
There was this it was in the Rams game, and I posted about this kind of over the summer. But one thing that really I think goes under talked about with Anthony Richardson, and particularly quarterbacks that are threat to make plays out of the pocket, is that they manipulate some of the zones. So, like, there was this play late in the Rams game during this comeback, and it was basically this off-scheduled throw to Kylan Granson on the sideline that got them into the goal line, basically. And they had brought interior pressure. Anthony Richardson runs out of the pocket, and you see these linebackers spying him, basically, and are drawn right to him, because they're like, we are not just going to let this guy, because nobody the thing is, and it's one of those things, when Anthony Richardson gets his feet going and gets downhill, people don't want any business tackling him. They really don't. Like, they will, because they're NFL players and they're psychotic kind of like that. But like, people don't, it's hard to tackle Anthony Richardson when he's got his feet. He's a downhill runner. Like, he's not like Lamar, where he's the shifty guy. Everything he does is explosive, and because of that, they want to stop him in his tracks early, so you can see him spy. Anthony Richardson opens up a window that would never be there if Matt Ryan was still under center. So that's something that you always have to think about. But I think those are pretty much all the keys to the game. There were some other tidbits I had, but I'm excited to get this one played. I'm excited to get the season rolling. And then I'm excited to not talk about the Texans.
Also, too, like, just real quick point before we do move on to the season-long stuff, which I guess this could play into the season-long talk as well. But I think that's why a lot of people, and myself included, I'm sure you're in this camp as well, are so kind of bullish on the accuracy, is because the way Anthony Richardson can manipulate zones, it opens up so many more throwing windows for him.
I think accuracy is still overstated. Like, it's a weakness. He's not perfect. There's also, like, I think you're lying to yourself. I'm getting way too into it.
Yeah, right.
Listen, I think you're getting way too into it when, like, people really want to put together this full-on scouting report off snaps that really don't. If you had a pro scout and was like, here's the 170 snaps, 82 dropbacks that I watched of a player, this is what I think he is, they'd laugh at you. They would laugh at but people want to project that into, like, this is what Anthony Richardson is, when there's just not enough proof either way. Like, he's had a couple drives in some games. He unfortunately took a lot of injuries. I think that's really got to be a focus this year.
Yeah.
But there's not enough to say that he's inaccurate. There also isn't enough to say he is accurate. I think there's certain traits of a quarterback that you don't need as many reps to decipher it. Like no one is going to sit here and say that Anthony Richardson isn't a dynamic, explosive playmaker. Nobody is going to sit here and say Anthony Richardson doesn't have ridiculous arm strength. Those are on film. Those are things that you don't need to see 50, 60, 70 reps, 80, 90, 100, even see multiple seasons to see. Something like accuracy is so variable dependent because it depended on the coverage, it depended on what he thought the route was going to be. It's dependent on if the route he thought it was going to be was ran correctly. There's so many different variables. I just don't think there's enough there to really critique something like, you could even say this about, can he read a defense? Like he saw very little. He saw some bland defenses by design from the scheme. I don't know that he can really do that. I think that there's what we have on evidence would show you that he can. But it's the same way that I can't say that he's.
I think that's. I think instead of like you're reading the defenses. I think for me, one of the big selling points that I kind of noticed this offseason, it was one of my keys at the beginning of the preseason as well. And you kind of heard the coaches talk about it. Is getting through the offensive progression. So not necessarily just reading the defense, because Shane's talked about too. Like he makes plays that it's not even really in the progression, right? But he sees a guy flash open. And that's just innate ability at that point. And he does have that. But I think to me, it's more about getting through the progressions quicker, understanding what you're seeing pre-snap, all that kind of stuff.
And those are things that are going to happen.
And I think that stuff.
People want to throw these takes. Okay, let's just get into the season.
Let's get into the season long stuff. All right. So season long kicks off Sunday. We just covered the Houston matchup. Before we do the Houston thing, do you want to give a winner or a loser, or do we?
I kind of tweeted it out. Here's what I'll say: this is a game that Houston, if they are who they say they are, Houston should win this game, and they should win it convincingly. If that's everything that we are told that they're supposed to be, and everything that that offseason hype, they should win this game, and they should win it convincingly. But I simply will not be writing off a Shane Steichen coach team in their house that are hungry after being sent home when their quarterback has not been afraid to give them bulletin board material. That's kind of how I feel about it. I am not willing to write this team off at all. But I also think that there's a lot of things that are also working against them in terms of adversity that they're going to face early on, just with really having such a young quarterback out there. But can you be 5 to 10 snaps better on defense? Can you be 5 to 10 snaps better on offense to win that game in week 18? I'm not willing to say that Houston is running away with a 2.5 point spread or whatever it is.
Yeah. And see, that's kind of where I'm as well. I do think, which I kind of mentioned early in the show, I think this is a good chance for the Colts to catch Houston off guard. I think there's a lot working in their favor this week, especially week 1, meeting them so early, was because while you do see the big name splashes and you're bringing new guys in and all that stuff takes time to develop. Where the Colts, I don't think you should really have that lull, because you are bringing in Anthony Richardson, but he's a guy that was here last year. He just wasn't available on the field.
Most of this team is back the same way. They know the mission.
Continuity. You should not have these slow starts to the year theoretically, because it's the same team. You already have not even just 1 year. You have multiple years now with these guys going into their 3rd season with Gus Bradley, 4th season with Gus Bradley, 2nd season with Shane Steichen on offense. Everything should be like a well-oiled machine early out of the gate. Now, it's football, right? It's never quite that simple. But I do think there's a lot of things, if the Colts are going to win this game, that do actually play into their favor, obviously with it being at home as well. That being said, this really comes down to 2 things for me. The quarterbacks on both sides of the ball. At the end of the day, it's going to be which quarterback can make the plays to carry their team. Because I think these teams, roster construction-wise, I think both these teams are very similar. They're both very strong rosters. Not a lot of weaknesses in either one. So at that point, it's really just down to the quarterbacks, and whichever quarterback can make the least amount of mistakes, can make some of the plays. I think that's the team you see win the game. I'm I'm actually going to take the Colts to steal this one. I think the Colts get this week. I'm going to take Indy in this one. So let's get into the season-long stuff here. We've talked about Houston. We've talked about this. So what are, to you, some of your biggest keys this season? How necessarily do you want to see this season play out? And then how really do you actually see the season playing out? So we can say like things that we want to happen, but how do you really actually see this season going for the Colts?
So I think it starts with number 5. It starts with everything under center. I think that, we've had this debate, I think, a bunch, actually on the previous show. I think outside of wins and losses, because those do come with this inevitably, like I think you want to leave this season being ready to Jim Irsay to kind of look at his checkbook and make sure his bank accounts.
Knowing that you have the guy.
That's basically what I'm trying to say, is knowing that you have the guy and being willing to be excited to kind of pay him down the line. I think when Joe Burrow took his team to the Super Bowl, not comparing it, not saying that he's never doing that at all, but that's that kind of feeling that you leave with even when.
Don't shy away from it. Go all in.
No. I'm not saying that this is a Super Bowl thing. I'm saying that like when they left that season and he wasn't available for a contract, even though it's the Bengals or whatever, but like they're probably knowing that this is their quarterback for a long time. And that's the ideal goal out of Indianapolis, is like, hey, this is something special. That's what you want to leave this with.
Yeah, and that's why you saw Houston kind of make the moves they did this offseason.
It's like we need to capitalize now while we're not paying this guy, because when we do pay this guy, things are going to look a lot different because he's that special of a player and he's going to get that special of a contract. So that's, I think, the ultimate thing that you would love to see. I really want to just see Jonathan Taylor bounce back. I think he is still in the upper echelon of running backs, though he hasn't been on the field these last couple seasons to actually show that. I think when he was healthy, and then in this scheme, this can be a legitimate problem.
Yeah, and towards the end of last year, especially in that last Houston game, I do think you see it, because he's a guy that, while you say, and I completely agree, that the scheme does help their running backs, and that's not debatable at all. But he's a guy where you see the difference, right, between the scheme helping a guy, but also the guy helping the scheme. And you have early on last year, you saw the success of Zach Moss, right? Where guy, he just churned out, 5, 10, losing my train of thought.
Chain moving runs.
Yeah. Sorry, I've got like off to the side here, like my dog's acting like an idiot.
Nah, you're good.
So, but he's a guy that, you see that where Jonathan Taylor, those same plays that did go for 5, go for 10 yards, those can go for 40. Those can go for 50. And it's such a threat. And it puts so much pressure on the defense to stay disciplined. And at that point, with Anthony Richardson now back, you're even adding in a different element to that. And it's almost pick your poison at that point, because you have to do a lot of guessing. And you're not going to be right every single time. And the one time that you're wrong, those are 2 guys that they can make you pay in a big way.
And I think we're seeing that wave. Like when you go look at like dynamic quarterbacks paired with elite running backs, go look at Baltimore right now. Go look at
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia is another great example of one. So like I think that teams with dynamic quarterbacks are realizing that they might want that running back. I still think I would make this argument. I still feel pretty strongly about this. 80% of this scheme, the runs in this scheme, are done by the offensive line and done by the scheme. Meaning that like a lot of the production, I think when you go look at it and really focus and study it all, which I know people around the NFL that have, is they would tell you that the majority of run production comes from offensive. It's a better bet that your offensive line can create holes that the majority of running backs should be able to run through, as opposed to betting on a Jonathan Taylor to go beast mode and create his own runs and break a billion tackles when his offensive line can't block him anything. So when you add that piece, and then you add the fact that Jonathan having the extra 10, 20% that Jonathan Taylor gives you, it's dangerous. It's dangerous behind this offensive line. I wouldn't rule out him rushing for some crazy numbers, potentially leading the league. It all depends. I really would never write that off, because I think if he can stay healthy, there's no reason this offensive line nor this scheme.
Well, here's the thing too, is you've seen it. You've seen him do it too. So it's not like it's something that's completely, you're just going out on a wild guess here. This is something that's actually taken place in the league. You know what a great player he is. For me, my key really this season, number 5's got to play all 17. I want to see, you've started 17 games your entire career since high school. I want to see another 17 added onto that. I want to see, and I understand the league. You might, yeah. I mean, you might miss, a game or two. It is what it is. But really, it's more about keeping yourself healthy for the long haul. This shouldn't be a
IR. It shouldn't no IR. That's really what I'm saying. It's listen, it's football. Football's football. There's a chance.
There's 100% injury rate in football. Every single player that plays football has been hurt.
There's a chance that there's a game he can't go. It happened to C.J. Stroud. It happened to pretty much every single quarterback. No IR. And I think that's really what the goal is. And just putting on your realistic hat versus putting it on your crazy fanalist biased hat is that it's going to happen. There's a chance. There's actually a pretty good chance that Anthony Richardson gets banged up for a game and Joe Flacco has to start one. It happens to everyone pretty much. Can that be it? Can it be no IR? Because you need to get those reps and you need to get those. So I'm in on that.
Yeah. And then for me, just to piggyback off that, my second key, I guess, that I'm really looking for this season is not necessarily the sack production. I want to see the pressure percentage go up. Obviously adding Latu in there, Kwity Paye, Dio, Tyquan Lewis, finally a healthy season now. He's 2 years removed from injury. Can that pressure percentage go up? Because as we talked about the fourth quarter of that Houston game, right? It was almost a season-long problem where I believe the Colts in the fourth quarter and overtime last season, their pressure percentage tanked. And I want to say 11 of the top 12 teams, right, that were in pressure percentage last year, they all made the playoffs. So if you can bump that pressure percentage off, get it more consistent to where sacks will come if you're creating pressure. The Colts, for some reason last year, it was really crazy if you really look at it.
The sack, pressure to sack conversion.
Yeah, they didn't create a ton of pressure, but they created a lot of sacks. I would almost be okay if that got reversed. Well, to an extent, the sacks are drive killers, right? So you always want to have the sack numbers. But I think getting that pressure percentage up to near the top 10 of the league, you're almost guaranteeing yourself a chance at a playoff spot. Because it's just been shown. Every team that was in the top 10 last year in pressure percentage made the playoffs. If you can reach that level, and I think this team has the horses to do it, if they can reach this level of hitting top 10 in pressure percentage, and Latu is the difference maker that we all think he's going to be, that he was in college. I think as a rookie, this guy's got a chance to be really special just right off the jump. DeForest Buckner, obviously, we know what he is. But even Kwity Paye, I think, could be the unheralded guy. I think Kwity Paye can even lead this team in sacks because, you have Buckner, you have Latu.
I'll give you another one.
Yeah, those quarterbacks are going to roll right over to Kwity Paye's side for the cleanup. I mean, he's going to have stuff handed to him on a silver platter almost. And if you can kill those drives, that's going to be such a big thing. So for me, it's AR staying healthy, playing, I won't say 17, but at least 15, right? And avoiding IR, like you said. That's going to be a key for me this season. I think the Colts getting near the top 10 in pressure percentage, I think you really have a shot to make the playoffs.
Yeah, so I totally agree. I think another name that I would add before I get to my last key is added Tamiwa Adebawore. Yes. I would love to have more rotational depth in the interior. We obviously saw from a run defense standpoint what it looked like with Grover Stewart out of the lineup and really off the field when he had to get a breather. But I think the other thing that it's really worth pointing out is DeForest Buckner really puts this defensive line on his back, as he should. He's got the contract to definitely back that up. He's one of the underrated guys in this league. He definitely,
which is crazy to think about.
It's crazy to think about, but which is crazy considering like if I'm an offensive guy, I'm game planning for him every single week because he just is that much of a beast. Getting some legitimate interior pressure could be good. They kicked Dio inside. They kicked Taekwon inside. They have the capability to do that. And on sub third down rushes, that makes a ton of sense. Having a guy that you can be there for run and pass and potentially improve that without a bar would be great. My key is going to be the secondary. It's going to be the secondary. Right now, there's very little excuses for these guys going into it. There really is. They have a front that is ready. That's a February front seven. That's what I've been saying. I mean, that like top bottom, that's a February front seven, one of the better in the league. When you go look at kind of being these young guys on the perimeter, well, whether it's their GM's fault or not, there's a lot of pressure on that because it's inevitably harder to make some of those explosive plays when you have pressure in your face. It's also going to be on them to take that next step. And it happens. It's the NFL, but like there was some times where like for all the bad quarterback nonsense, there also was a gauntlet of wide receivers, and a lot of them did some damage. Mike Evans comes to mind. Devontae Adams was held somewhat in check during that Raiders game, but there was definitely, he got his for sure. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins.
Yeah, I was going to say T. Higgins was one.
T. Higgins. Did Drake London have a big game? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Well, anyway, they faced a gauntlet. Notoriously, this defense has let some of these guys in last year absolutely. Nico Collins, there's another one. Can they?
Drake London was held in check. It was really Bijan Robinson killed him.
I remember that. See, that's when I knew they needed Grover Stewart for the Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. This is what it is. So this is the group we're rolling with, and I think they've got to hold their own. I think Nick Cross has to definitely come in and make some plays and at least hold his own on the back end. He's still really young when you look at it.
Is he 22?
Yeah, Juju Brents has to be a physical press corner. He's got to stay on the field.
He's another guy. He's got to stay healthy.
Julian Blackmon needs to carry this group. I think he for all the talk on the secondary, he's a Pro Bowl player when he's healthy, but when he's healthy is a question mark. Can you get a good marriage between rushing and coverage? And can you do that? And then this defense has a chance to be successful because, to be honest with you, if this defense doesn't look great, I'm not sure how long they would keep Gus Bradley in the scheme because the talent is too good to waste and not have this type of defense. Or is Chris Ballard really going to force his hand and really have to go, hey, I bet on my guys, it didn't work, the same old, or whatever those results are. But like some of the games some of the throws just can't, some of the miscommunications just can't happen.
Yeah, and like I said, that to me should play in the big continuity talk, right? This is what they've hung their hat on this entire offseason is we're going to bring everybody back. We like the team we had. We think another year of growth. We think continuity is the most important thing in the NFL. This is what you.
I don't disagree either. I actually don't disagree. The only thing I disagree with the secondary, and I'm on record of saying this, is why didn't you bring literally anyone in to
competition?
Push competition? Because what if they did work? I didn't need the $10 million guy in that building, but you bring someone new and they just didn't do that. So that's where I disagree.
Yeah, no, I think our thoughts on this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well,
very well.
My third key is the kicking situation.
Yeah, right.
I'm definitely not talking about that.
But yeah, the continuity has been the biggest selling point. So to me, it's time to put up or shut up, right? Put your money where your mouth is, because there's been so many years now. This is what now 3 years in a row that they've just been right there. Well, obviously the Matt Ryan year, they weren't right. But before that, there's these guys that they're right there on the cusp of it. You just haven't got it done. So this year, can you take that next step of actually getting yourself into position and capitalizing on that position to get into the dance?
Yeah, totally. So I think we're on the same page there. But overall, like, for all the complaining that Colts Twitter likes to do, this is a
lot of it.
A lot of it. This is a talented team. There's no reason that they're not in the. I just caught myself Chris Ballard. There's no reason they're not in the mix for not only just a playoff spot, but like
division title
and divisional round. I think that's where I really capped the ceiling. But they are a talented team, and once you're in the dance, you never know. So it's one of those things. I think they are super talented. I think I just will never write off a Shane Steichen coach team. I just won't do it. I just really won't do it. I mean, the dudes just can coach, and like even the games that it doesn't work out, you think to yourself, like, and he's not perfect, like, obviously. I think there's some.
What's the NFL? I mean, these other guys get paid too, right? The other guys,
exactly. But like, all in all, like, it's just he has such a good feel in terms of a play caller. He's such a good game planner.
Like preparation.
You don't look at the Colts film and you look at it objectively, because I really try and take like the fan in me out of it when I watch, and you just don't see a lot of bad football where it's like there's a couple things obviously, but you don't see like unsound football. It's really well coached. It's really well done. I just think teams like that, especially when you're built in the trenches, like the trenches is why the reason the Miami Dolphins hasn't won anything. Not to give them a stray, but like I'd rather be built in the trenches than be built anywhere else. So I do agree with Chris Ballard from that capacity.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So last little bit here. If you have one bold prediction for this team, not necessarily record-wise or anything, but it's one bold prediction, whether it be a player's performance, whether it be the team performance, anything like that, what is your bold prediction for this team in 2024? I know you hate this shit, don't you?
I fucking hate this shit.
We got to give the viewers, though. I mean, like, this is such
they got to give one. I'll say this. I think there's a lot of guys on this defensive line that nobody knows or talks about, or for whatever reason aren't big names. I think that changes come the winter. I think there's going to be some guys that really start to emerge, not named Laiatu Latu and DeForest Buckner, that people are going to really start talking about. Whether that's Quiddy, whether that's Isaiah Land, whether that's Tommy, whether that's Dio, whether that,
even Grover Stewart to an extent. It's not really
even Grover Stewart, who's talked about wanting to be a better pass rusher. So like, I think I don't know how bold that is, or if that really answers the question, but it's like,
I mean,
I think there's some guys that not named DeForest Buckner and Laiatu Latu that we're really going to start talking about because they're going to emerge.
Yeah, I don't think that's bold, or I don't think that's anything.
It's such a cop out.
No, I mean, that is. So mine, I was telling him before the episode, is I think Alec Pierce leads this team in receiving touchdowns this year. And whether that's double,
I think that's way bolder than mine.
Yeah, that's super bold. I'm going out on a limb here, but I really do think with Anthony Richardson, and that's even with AD Mitchell kind of cutting into that workload. I just think if you're going to have a year, and like you said, with the cornerback situation where you're bringing in people for the competition to raise the potential of other guys in that room, I think that's exactly what AD Mitchell does to Alec Pierce. I think AD Mitchell makes him, hey, I don't have as long of a leash as I thought I did. It's put up or shut up time. This is my third year now. I don't have the excuse of, the quarterback not having the arm or anything like that to get it to me. This is your time to show out. So with everything I've seen, the way he's been talked about in preseason, the way the coaches have kind of gushed about what he's done this year, I think this is the year he puts it together. And I don't think he necessarily leads the team in targets or receiving or anything like that, but I think the guy is going to be a huge mismatch problem in the red zone and take some of these explosive plays to the house this year. And That's my bold prediction for the year is Alec Pierce leads this team in receiving touchdowns.
I really don't. I think one of the things that's really easy to do when you draft a receiver that high is just write off Alec Pierce. You're like, we haven't really, he's had a lot. He inevitably did not have a great year last year.
And there's always excuses, right?
There's always excuses. I think I wrote an article on it for the Blue Stable. Actually, I think it's a garbage excuse that Gardner Minshew didn't have the arm to get it to him when you look at the Tennessee game.
Well, Anthony Richardson, I believe, targeted him at a lower rate than Gardner Minshew did.
Yes, that was what I included into the thing. Is like those excuses are fan excuses. They're not real excuses. Alec Pierce is whether. And it's tough because I hate criticizing players sometimes because you don't know if they're playing insanely hurt or how much they're really, because nobody, literally, Alec Pierce has taken the most wide receiver snaps last year out of any wide receiver in the entire National Football League. So he
ran the most yardage.
He ran the most
routes on air than anybody.
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough to say that, but he just wasn't good underneath. He was not. He had no suddenness, no
change of direction,
the stuff that you need. And it was really just, I'm a one-trick pony that happens, maybe 3 shots a game that you might take to me or even look my way. What else does he bring to the table? Obviously, the Colts felt like they needed more in that capacity. They brought A.D. Mitchell, which I think is maybe the Alec Pierce in a way. Not that A.D. Mitchell can't go deep and make all those same plays, but he's a lot more sudden than he is explosively fast.
And the way that he gets in and out of his breaks
the way he gets in and out of his breaks is almost polar opposite from Alec Pierce. But I don't think you can totally write off Alec Pierce either, just because it's very easy to. But and I said this kind of when he was drafted, is like Alec Pierce might just straight up outsnap A.D. Mitchell just because of the fact that Alec Pierce is just a better run blocker at this stage. Yeah. Whether that changes with A.D. Mitchell.
He knows the offense now.
And that's he also has a year up. So we'll see how it all plays out. I don't think that's like an insanely, I think if you give the overarching thing for me of I'm not writing off Alec Pierce and I'm just envisioning an offense with AD, Michael Pittman, and Josh Downs, I think I would be wrong. So
it's a good problem to have, right? Whenever Alec Pierce is your 4th guy, I think this is the deepest wide receiver group in the Chris Ballard era. I think this is the best wide receiver group in the Chris Ballard era. So I'm super excited to get to Sunday, man. I can't wait. We're not going to do any of the whole record predictions or anything like that. That's not what we do. Maybe if Marcus was here, we might throw one out.
Marcus probably would have agreed, but he might have said
he would have pressured us into it, but he's not here. He's not here, but I think all that being said, I think this team has a chance to do some really, really good things. I think the main thing is, for me, this is just where I'm at in my watching phase right now. I think this team's just going to be fun. And that's, to me, almost more important right now is just to have
fun. Have fun watching ball. Yeah. I just want to have
fun watching Colts football. I want to watch Colts football and just have fun and enjoy it again. And I think that's where I'm at this season. I think this is what this team gives you this season. And even during the wins and even during the losses, you're going to see some stuff it's going to be like,
I'm going to go look at the film and be like, that was sick.
That's sick.
And I'm going to cope and it's going to be great.
So if y'all think we're bad now, posting film clips and making excuses for Chris Ballard and all that, you just wait till this year. I'm
fired up because there's no way it's not fun, even if it's bad. So that's the way.
And really, I put a tweet out earlier because Brett Coleman he had put out, how excited he is for this year too, and I kind of echoed the sentiments. And I'm like, man, there's really only 2 or 3 teams that I'm sitting back and I'm looking at, and I'm like, man, I want no part of watching them. But everybody else, even if they're bad teams, that can be really fun to watch, man. I
feel like it's like that every year, but then the quarterback injury,
that's
plays such a factor. The Bengals would have been great last year, but Joe Burrow got injured and was out for the year.
The Chargers
would have been. I still think they probably part ways with Staley, but it certainly doesn't help when you get blown out like that to the Raiders. So
Justin Herbert going down, that was a big one, and then.
I'm excited. I don't think
that's with Aaron Rodgers and all that. So I just think there's just so many. The league is in such a good place right now with all these young guys coming in, and
everyone's
prioritizing. Yeah, like a lot of people are really prioritizing offense and quarterback development more than they ever have, about getting these younger quarterbacks, but not only that, but pairing them with a guy that's going to play to their strength. And that creates more fun football. That creates better football to me. Instead of just rolling guys out there and trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And like, I know this guy doesn't do well in our system, but he's going to play in our system and we're going to draft him. We're going to put him in our system. Basically what the entire Titans franchise has done their existence with Vince Young and Marcus Mariota and all. I mean, like this is our system.
It's where wide receivers go to die, man.
Yeah, it's a retirement home. But even they have a chance to be fun this year.
And I think they will be low key.
I think they're going to be better than what people.
I think there's a chance. It's injuries really just play your best.
Yeah, this division, man. This division's like these divisional games are going to be incredible to watch. I'm so excited.
I think the AFC South has a chance to be one of the best divisions of football.
To me, it's at least the second best division in the AFC.
With the North,
yeah. I would say the North and the South are the two best divisions. I mean, you could. Well, I don't know.
North.
The East is tough. But man,
they're all tough.
The AFC is just a damn gauntlet, man. It's sick. What a sick thing. So,
all right. Well, everyone enjoy this game. Don't tweet me about the secondary. Or the kicking situation, because I'm Colts film room, but I don't know anything about kickers. So I pretend they don't exist. They're going to make it most of the time.
Yeah, I played soccer for 17 years. I mean, I know about kicking, but not enough to actually give it to you straight. I don't care enough about kicking, for being honest. So yeah, we're going to get off here. Marcus, we miss you. Can't wait to have you back next week. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back next week breaking down what happened in the Houston game, the good or the bad, probably the good and the bad, if we're being honest. And we'll be giving you our preview going in to Green Bay, which I know is going to be such a fun game for both Ben and myself. Big Green Bay guys here. So it's going to be super fun. Make sure to like, subscribe.
Another Shanahan offense I have to freaking watch with a fullback.
Here we go. It's all over the league, man. You might as well get in. So,
all right, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week. Maybe if I can end the stream.